I appreciate everybody giving me a chance to, as Ernie Ladd would say, wring my brain out. Your brain is like a sponge. When it absorbs all the knowledge it can, you must wring it out. I'm going to be wringing for 10 days and try to restore my sanity.
Will you watch any wrestling?
Oh no, absolutely fucking only if it's from the 70s. If I get, like a great classic DVD or somebody, oh no, I just caught that. A classic DVD or something like that, I might watch that, but there is not a chance in fucking hell. Well, as Nikolai Volkoff said one time on TV, there's two chances, slim and none, and slim and walk away from town. And
where do you say that, in Mid-South?
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, so we're doing interviews, right, at Channel 3 in Shreveport, which we did every Wednesday, no matter where we were on Tuesday night, where we booked on Wednesday night. You were in Shreveport, Louisiana, at Channel 3 to do the local promos for the Mid-South television shows for the local events every Wednesday from 9 o'clock in the morning. So that meant I left Alexandria, where I lived, at 5:45. No, I'm sorry, 6:45 every Wednesday morning to go and do interviews. We'd do interviews in Shreveport from 9 to like 3 or 3:30. And then sometimes on Wednesday night, every 2 weeks, we'd be in Shreveport, right? We'd just go down the street and do the Irish McNeil television taping. But every 2 weeks, we'd be at a house show on Wednesday night. And one time it was Greenwood, Mississippi. So I got up at 6 o'clock. I left at 6:45 from Alexandria, drove 100 miles to Shreveport, did 6 hours of local promos, and then got in a car and drove 280 miles to Greenwood, Mississippi, where we did a house show that night. And then it was 240 miles back to Alexandria. That was a Wednesday in Mid-South. But anyway, so Butch Reed was a fucking, he liked to joke around. He's the one, he'd cut promos on people. You cry, you're selling wolf tickets. With Junkyard Dog, when Dog would be saying something, building up something as bullshit. But you're selling wolf tickets. And another thing that Butch said was, you got two chances, Slim and none, and Slim just left town, right? So Butch is making cracks and JYD's making cracks. Of course, I'm a one-liner machine, whatever the fuck. And Nikolai Volkoff decides he's going to get with the program and be entertaining, right, on his promos. So what he did was he got up there, let me tell you something, Terry Taylor. And he really talked like this. Nikolai's accent was not exaggerated. I mean, exaggerate when he wouldn't yell all the time like that, but he talked like that. He had the accent. He was from fucking goddamn one of those Ukrainian, Russian sounding countries. Anyway, he said, let me tell you something, Terry Taylor. You have two chances to beat me in Biloxi, Slim and a none. And Slim has walked away from town. And Watts stood up, because Bill Watts supervised every single one of the local promos. Bill Watts stood up and said, cut! Do it again, Nikolai. 10,000 comedians out of work and you're telling jokes. Last thing we need is a Russian stand-up. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I do it again. Because Watts would fucking yell at anybody. He didn't give a shit. And that was the smoothest local promo session of any company I've ever worked for. It's like even the cameras were afraid to break down. And even though the heels and baby faces were together in the room, imagine you're in a TV studio and on one side there's like the news set, right, with the weather map and everything. And that's all dark and they've got stuff sitting in front of it because they're not using that now. But on the other side is, you remember in Mid-South, they had a blue curtain and a podium where Reese or Bowden or Jim Ross, whoever conducted interviews with the baby faces usually. And then there was another colored curtain lit differently. And that was where the heels did their promos. And instead of 1 3-minute local promo being all baby faces, the way that Watts did it, which was genius, was so he could have confrontation, was the podium and the announcer were in one studio and they'd bring in the baby face. And then they'd say, standing by in another studio is his opponent so-and-so, and they would go to the heel in the other studio. However, The other studio had no wall in between. It was literally 10 feet to the fucking right, but because you couldn't tell, right? Have I described this correctly?
I think so.
Okay, but here's the kicker. Because they were using local TV station cameraman, and as TV station employees were just obviously allowed willy-nilly to walk through as long as it wasn't a hot set, red light was on, meaning we're recording. They can walk through and do their business. It's their TV station, right? So all the baby faces sat at these two tables set up on Watts's side, on the left-hand side where the podium area was. And all the heels sat 10 feet over there behind a monitor on an equipment case is what was separating us from the baby faces. And we sat over on the other side in front of that curtain. And the only time any of the heels ever went to the podium was if it was just a single interview, they'd use the podium if there was no cutaway. But because there's no baby face, the heel could be there at the time. But otherwise, for the station employees and the cameramen's benefit, we were not allowed to talk to the baby faces in that fucking promo room. We had to go to the bathroom together if we wanted to discuss anything that we might be saying to each other.
6 hours.
For 6 hours.
You couldn't speak to them. Wow.
Because it would fucking smarten people up.
Let me ask you something. We hear so much about what a tyrant Bill Watts was, and he would certainly dress down anyone. I mean, Austin Idol told me years ago a story. He had that amazing run in Georgia in 1980 that when Bill Watts was booking, he went up to him, he goes, "Look, I have one request. If you're going to yell at me, don't do it in front of the boys." And Watts actually honored that. But Watts typically would dress down anyone, including his kids.
Yes.
In front of anyone.
Joel, you blithering idiot.
With that said, other than the fact that, Vince McMahon obviously has a giant staff that he takes to TV each and every week, was there a smoother operation in Mid-South Wrestling?
No, absolutely not. But here's the thing. Everybody goes, okay, they're saying Cornette saying Watts screamed at everybody and called his son a blithering idiot. He must have been an asshole. No, I identify now, especially during a television taping when something was going wrong. And back in those days, especially when you couldn't post-produce, you don't have time to call everyone together and sit down and explain to them, well, this is why this was really going south. And I appreciate your viewpoint, but perhaps we should do this and that and the other thing. Now let's go out there and do it again, or let's go out and correct this or what. No, you go, God damn it. What are you doing? Don't do this, go do that. Now I have actually fucking Irish whipped Eddie Edwards is who it was in Baltimore. Eddie forgot he was supposed to do a run in. And was not standing by to run in because he forgot that he was supposed to be doing it. And I love Eddie. I'm not knocking him. But I'm in a truck going, where's Eddie? We're trying to find Eddie. I run in the back. And there comes Eddie running up. They've just found him. And he's as a refresher, as I grabbed his left arm, I said, get to the ring, hop on so-and-so and so-and-so, I'll peel you off. And I Irish whipped him down the fucking aisleway. And he didn't get mad because it was his fault. He was late. But this shit is going down in real time a lot of times. Or you've got 6 hours to do fucking 9 hours worth of television work anybody else would normally do. So you don't have time to sit around fucking, no, you say, God damn it, do this. Shit, the heat is on. And that's what, now that obviously that there are these giant staffs and a lot of producers and everything's micromanaged, there's not a lot of that coming from one particular individual. But in the old days, whoever the booker was basically the only guy, or maybe one of two guys, giving out anything. You had to do it quick, not polite. And they listen to you when you're straight. You fucking idiot. We're all going to die because of you. That's a way to get your attention. Now go out there and do whatever the fuck. And it was the same way shit was delivered to me. I'm not saying everybody screamed at everybody for everything, but when something is going on, something's going wrong, something needs to be changed or something needs to be saved, there's a lot of fucking urgent yelling going on. But no, to answer your question, Watts's operation in every way, the house shows starting on time, guys getting there on time, because if they didn't, they got fined. But the promos, the television, the layout, that's where I learned at promos to read formats. Because as we've talked about before, the show bicycled around the area. what showed in New Orleans, the same show might not make it to fucking Oklahoma City for 4 or 5 weeks. So anytime you're doing a local promo, you have to see what segment of what show your promo is in, and you can refer to anything that's happened beforehand, but not afterwards, even though you've already taped sometimes 3 or 4 weeks worth of television. So that's how I learned to goddamn read formats and keep track of shit. And everybody else had the same opportunity because he gave you all the formats, all the sheets, all the paperwork, where your promos were going. It was your job to read it and figure it out and remember what you'd done. It was a wrestling college. And by sitting at Watts's promo tapings on a Wednesday for 6 hours, you could not only learn how to obviously cut promos, you could learn how to fucking write and time television if you so applied yourself.
Did you ever have, either in Mid-South or somewhere else, a day where you're doing all these a long day of promos, and for whatever reason you hit a block, you hit a wall, and you just couldn't come up with something?
No.
All right, forget my question.
Well, no, I mean, honest God, because here's the thing, it's local promos, and so it's only going to show in one market. So you could technically do the same promo, more or less. I mean, we had nothing written down. We're doing it off the top of our heads. You could do the same promo if you had the same match with the same team or whatever. But a lot of times they were different because the guy in front of you would go longer or go shorter, or you'd refer to something that was going on in that market. Like JYD would say hello to the Honorable George C. Culkin, a Jackson, Mississippi promoter that was the virulent racist and hated him. And every Jackson, Mississippi promo was JYD talking about how much he enjoyed last time he was up in Jackson, sitting on the front porch of George C. Culkin's house, eating some fried chicken and watermelon with him. And how then Butch Reed had spoiled it that night at the fairgrounds, and how this time it was going to be different. And George C. Culkin told him he could come back and have dinner again, blah, blah, blah. And, of course, George C. Culkin would call fucking Watts and scream at him because that so-and-so's talking like he came to my house and blah, blah, blah. And Watts would say, yeah, and the fucking house was sold out, wasn't it, George? So fuck off. But all those things were variables, and Watts would change the matches up in a lot of cases around the territory, especially some of the underneath ones. And so you just did it off the top of your head, so you could obviously repeat the same lines when you hit on something that was, kind of a good one, like with Watts in the last Stampede. On every local promo, I said he's walking so tall, the top of his head's coming through his hair. He's got a mouthful of memories his brittle old bones can't back up anymore. But anyway, but no, I never really got stuck because you can just blather your way through it. To whether they were all great or not is subject to debate, but I never had a problem filling the fucking time.
Every now and then on Mid-South, when you watch some of those local promos, you hear some laughter in the background. And there are some funny guys. I mean, even though you're a heel, you're a pretty funny guy. Jim Duggan, if you have never seen Jim Duggan before the World Wrestling Federation, you need to see him in Mid-South, not just in the ring, but his promos.
Oh, yeah, that was the best part of Hacksaw in 84 in Mid-South was the promos.
Who would typically be laughing? Who was the guy who would always crack up at these promos? Was there one particular person, or how did it work?
Well, no, sometimes it depended on how it struck an individual person, but Nikolai was a bad laugher. He would just, there'd be guys over there with their mouth like that, or trying to not, but you'd occasionally hear the giggles. And sometimes, every once in a while, I remember a cameraman would actually crack up, and then Watts would give us, all right, cut. But he'd get mad at the fucking guys for being funny. He's like, God damn it, sell the fucking tickets. Don't entertain the cameraman. But, if he would be mad at guys for being funny, if it did, like me being a sarcastic smartass, he was fine with. He never told me. The only thing that JR has told this story 100 times. I think the only time that Bill Watts ever told me to do an interview over again or criticized one of my interviews. And imagine that I was there for a year. So imagine how much territory that takes in. When I first got there, I was trying to, to do the fucking Lawler Lance thing with Reeser Bowden because he was such a fucking topic, right? And I think JR tells it that it was him, but I think it may have been Reese. Anyway,
Reese was doing the local promos still when you first got
there.
there.
But I'm blistering the announcer. Point is, and his clothes and his fucking style, and then I cut the promo on the. But half of it had been because I'm just starting I'm starting to get over. People don't know, so I'm doing my shit right and just eviscerate this fucking announcer. And I think it was with Reeser because it was even funnier because he had no reaction whatsoever. He looked like a dead man. I think I actually said, you look like you're ready to be laid out and have words spoken over you. What is the matter with you? You know? And so Watts let me go through the whole thing. And then I did talk about our opponents and our match and everything, but especially it was an underneath match because we were there just to get over. So anyway, at the end of it, he says, all right, good. Now do it again. What? Cornette, I have not, nor do I intend to book you versus the announcer in the immediate or far-reaching future. Therefore, the match is your Midnight Express versus so-and-so. Do it again. Yes, sir. Again, and he was right because that's the way he thought. And so that's, what we did.
And I've heard him talk about not that specific promo, but him doing that when he got to Florida. And Eddie Graham pulled him aside and said, I'm not booking you against Gordon Soley. And also it hurts the credibility of my program if you're completely berating my announcer, who's the credibility on my show.
So that's a perfect, as a matter of fact, that was in Watts' book, wasn't it? I remember that story.
It may have been, yeah.
I think it was, but regardless that's an example of, that would have been 1972-ish or 3 that conversation was had. Watts had been in the business 10 years, but he's trying to be a heel and he's trying to get over and, et cetera. And that's an example of how even a great mind can, because it involves you can go sideways and then somebody else has to tell you. And then also, so that was 1972, 12 years later, he gives me the same advice. So technically, I got that advice from Eddie Graham because if Eddie Graham hadn't said it to Bill Watts wouldn't have said it to me.
I would think it may have been 74, just based on time.
Well, nevertheless, the point is 10 years later, it goes on, and that's how, and everybody says Eddie was such a genius, but once again, in the 50s, Eddie Graham spent a significant period of time in Texas learning from Dory Funk Sr., who more than in-ring was said to be one of the greater, just psychologists and just, people to read the fucking fans. So all that shit used to get passed down because now, if Watts said that to me, if we were if we were exactly the same age now as we were in 1984 with Watts in his fucking mid 40s and me in my early 20s, I would go to everybody in the locker room and go, listen to that old fucking boomer, that fucking dinosaur. He's trying to hold me back from being funny and being entertaining and getting over on TV because he wants all this shit to make sense. What the fuck?
He should be learning from me.
Yeah, he should be learning from me because I know all the new shit. That's what would happen now, which is why wrestling looks like what it does now. But back then, it was, yes, sir.